Okay, at this point I have the truck jacked up and I already had the tire off. This is a 2005 Dodge Ram 1500 four-wheel drive, doing a wheel bearing change here. And the two caliper bolts that I'm taking out here are 13/16. So you may need a breaker bar to break those loose, or just put your pipe on your ratchet. That's what I do a lot of times. I've got little pieces of pipe and I'll just put them on my ratchet to extend it. That way I can get some more leverage and break those bolts loose. And I would recommend as well using some WD-40 here. It would make it much easier. This is my method of doing the wheel bearing. Okay, now we've got it, all of that taken off. I've got the caliper off here. The next thing to come off is the rotor here. Go ahead and take that off. And the caliper, you don't have to, a lot of people will hang it up, but I put it on my control arm up there, the upper control arm. Just set it up there, make sure it's setting up there good. There's one of the bolts, make sure you keep up with those, the 13/16 caliper bolts. Just set them to the side, make sure you don't lose them, whatever you do. Something too that's very important to remember here, as you can see that splash guard there, that little thin strip of metal behind the wheel bearing, you see how that's aligned right now. Pay close attention to that. 36mm for the axle nut here with the breaker bar. But pay attention to that splash guard. As you can see how it's aligned right there. When I put this back together, I align it the wrong way. I didn't pay attention to that when I was taking it off. And it's the second time I've done that. So whenever you do put your splash shield back on, the thin piece of metal back there behind this wheel bearing, you'll see it fall down once I get this loose. Whenever you do put that back on, make sure you align it like you see right here. If not, you're going to have a lot of trouble and you're going to have to take the whole thing back apart. And it's really a big headache. There's the axle nut, set that to the side. Make sure your axle will slide in and out good as well. And you can get in your truck, start it up, and turn your wheel and make it much easier to get to these 18mm bolts here. These are there's three of them. They should be in kind of like a triangle pattern, one on the top and then two on the bottom corners. These are your 18mm, and I would recommend as well, before you, these as well, I would recommend, because you can see how hard they kind of work for me to get off. There's one right there. Spray those as well with some kind of penetrant lubricating oil like WD-40 or something like that, and give it a little bit of time to break it loose, maybe 5 or 10 minutes at least. And then go ahead and go in there and start taking them out. And as you can see, my truck's very dirty. I use this truck for firewood and landscaping, so I don't keep it. It's hard to keep clean. But as you can see, that bolt there coming out, there will be 3 of those that hold the wheel bearing on. And they're not the easiest thing to get to the way I do it here either. There's other methods of doing this, but I didn't want to have to take everything apart really, so I kind of left most of the stuff together and just kind of worked my way in there, and I was able to do it. I was able to get to them. You'll have to kind of work that axle back and forth with one hand and then the ratchet with the other, though. Or if you got a helper, have them push in on the axle. Because if you don't, that axle is going to make it very hard to get those bolts out, as you see here. The axle's kind of pushing against that bolt. But if you've got somebody that'll push in against it for you, or if you can do it with one hand, that's what I did. I work alone a lot of times. I've learned to do that. There's a shot of another one of the bolts. As I said, there's 3 of them. And I thought at first, whenever this started to make a lot of noise, I thought it was my brake pads were going bad. So I ended up changing them and realized while I was doing that, the pads still had plenty of material on them. Okay, here's the bolts, the 3 18mm, the axle nut, which is a 36mm, the axle nut, and then the 2 caliper bolts, which are 13/16. And what I did, I just got an old maul here that was broken in half. All you need is something heavy and with a handle on it that you can generate quite a bit of force with, and just start beating that bearing. This is how I've always done it. They do have tools, if I'm not mistaken, to take those off. I've never used them. I've always just hit them with sledgehammers or something of that nature all around, and even kind of get in behind them there and hit them towards you if you can. And once you hit them quite a few times, they do break loose. But as you can see, that splash shield, that's it right there, the thing that's hanging on the axle. Oh, yes, bad. you can see me here trying to figure out really how that thing goes back on, and I put it probably one of the worst ways you could put it. So do not do what I did. Here's the new bearing. As you can see, it turns freely and it's very quiet. The other one was horrible. I mean, when I was driving down the road, it was squealing horribly. And the one on the other side of it went bad on me probably about 2 or 3 weeks prior to this one going bad. So if I'm not mistaken, you get them put on around the same time. They should go out around the same time. And kind of wiggle that bearing back and forth. There are gears. The axle has like gears around it. I don't know that I would call it gears. It has slots around it. And you just got to wiggle that wheel bearing until you feel it slide into those slots and then push it forward. Now, whenever you're tightening these 18 millimeters back up, though, do it kind of in like a star pattern. Put one end, tighten it up a little bit, then put another end, tighten it up a little bit, and another, and then kind of go back and forth on them. Don't tighten one up all at once. If you do, you're not going to be able to align this wheel bearing the way you need to. So tighten them a little bit at a time. I mean, get one tightened down just a little to where it's holding good, and then go on and put your other two in, and then kind of go between the three in sort of like a star pattern. But it is harder to get in like that. As you can see, it's starting to get dark on me here. Go ahead and put your axle nut back on. Once you get all of those good and snug, put your axle nut on. And make sure, as I said, your axle is sliding out the way it should, though. Before you tighten those 18 millimeters up, make sure your axle is aligned right. Then go ahead and snug this down, and once you do that, you put your rotor back on and your caliper. I don't think I have any footage of that. But once you get this nut snug back down, just put your rotor on, and which is easy. You just put that on there, and then your caliper, and you may have to compress your brake piston. And there are videos that show you how to do that. Thanks for watching.